if you kind of look at the landscape of our Christian culture
Yeah.
specifically, what do we think is the kind of the biggest areas of weakness that, not that we're going to be the prophetic voices of this, although,
Yeah. Hopefully. Maybe.
maybe, but just like, hey, if I took a sample of the kind of the Christian culture that I've been exposed to or heard of, where can we grow in this idea of discipleship, of being with Jesus, becoming like him, and ultimately doing what he did? What do you guys think? What comes to mind for you personally? Like, I would love to see our Christian culture grow in this.
Um, I mean, we talked about it already, but simplicity.
Mhm.
I think we live in a consumeristic culture, and there's so much excess, and even just what we were just talking about with like the resources that we have at our availability. Like we still need to be selective, and I think being able to pare things down. I found a lot of comfort in looking at the historical church and what they've been doing for centuries. They haven't had internet and
Yeah.
iPhone,
Yeah.
so these things that are dangers to us today were not present in that age.
Yeah.
And so being able to kind of look at their practices, and even incorporate some of that into my own life and my own walk with Jesus. I think the culture that we live in tells us that we know best because of the information that we have available to us, and we discount the wisdom from from cultures and people who've gone before us, generations who've gone before us. And so being able to look back to the historical church and learn from the historical church. And I think that's what you guys have done a lot of in incorporating Sabbath and fasting and all of these other spiritual disciplines that you've talked about at the Institute. I think that is really important for this, cultural moment that we're living in now.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good.
What do you think I'm going to say?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I think all of my academic students and interns and all of them will laugh at this because they'll know exactly. I think it's helping people will develop a rule of life, but really see that every moment of their life is an opportunity to integrate something spiritual.
Yes.
That everything they're doing is spiritual.
Yes.
So rule of life. And
yes.
So if you don't know what that term means, it's ancient, as Emily was saying. Really, it got started with the early Christians, like we're talking about 3rd, 4th, 5th century. And really what they wanted to do was like form a whole structure or way of life around following Jesus, because they began to see the church beginning to compromise with really at that time the culture of Rome. And so they kind of removed themselves and created a rule of life. And
the rule of life, for people that are visual people, what is the visual that actually?
I was just about to explain that. So I think the word comes from, there's a lot of discussion on this, but ultimately it comes from the Latin word for trellis, and tries to paint this picture of a trellis is what would hold up a vine, and particularly like a grapevine to help produce fruit. And so if you just allow the vine to go on the ground, it'll either get eaten by like critters or swept away by like the rain or whatever. And so a trellis actually holds it up and allows fruit to produce. And so the picture kind of there is this idea of, okay, Jesus calls us to be connected to the vine, and he paints that picture for us, and we'll produce fruit. Well, what actually allows us to do that? What allows us to abide in him?
The framework. It's the framework.
Yeah, it's a rule of life, which allows us to structure. So it's just a set of, Pete Scazzaro says, it's a set of practices that keep God at the center of our life. And I think helping people see that really everything they do can be an avenue for that.
Yes.
And whether it's work, whether it's parenting, whether it's spending time in silence, solitude, whether it's Sabbath, reading scripture, whatever you like, all of those could be avenues in which they can experience God, instead of just, I think often it can be siloed into my morning quiet time and going to church. Everything in between is I'm just going to do my best not to swear, not to like hate someone. But seeing that, okay, all this is opportunity to experience God's presence, which is informing us towards him.
Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, I feel like a lot of what we're talking about fits in within that, right? That's kind of the framework of it all. But I would say in our culture, I would, if I would, like a linchpin thing would be presence versus fast pace.
Yeah.
Meaning everything about us is immediate. It's on to the next, and I'm the king of that. I'm like I'm the best at it.
Mm.
And yet, what has changed radically changed my life in general, and therefore all other aspects of my
Mhm.
life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, is learning to be present with Jesus,
Yeah.
which means having to slow down.
Yeah.
It means how I spend time in my car
Mhm.
driving to
Mhm.
and from work. It means
Mhm.
how I wake up and how I go to sleep.
Mhm.
It literally the presence is what has like kind of dominoed everything
Mhm.
Yeah.
else in my life. And I think I would, if we can teach people, which that's what we try to do with the Waymaker Institute Rule of
Yeah.
Life. It's like we're teaching them to cultivate these things so that they know, man, what does it look like to actually be in the presence of
Yeah.
Jesus, and to
Mhm.
cultivate that intentionally,
Yeah.
so that throughout your day, everything else has changed and
Yep.
affected.
Mhm.
And I think to kind of like tie this even back around to the original definition, like the ultimate goal is to be someone who is actually bringing heaven to earth
Mhm.
through your everyday life, actually doing what Jesus said, like actually bringing the presence of God into your family, into your workplace, into
Mhm.
your extended family, into
Mhm.
wherever you're going. And I think helping people like understand that, man, there is like God desires to use you to bring about his kingdom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's not just going to happen. You're just
Right.
going to happen to be one day be someone who's doing that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's taking on that lifelong pursuit of, again, being with, becoming like, and eventually you will be and actually do the things he did,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and helping people get that. Also, like there's an end goal here that is
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
build, to make disciples, right?
Yep.
That's what we're called to do.
Yep.
And first you got to actually become a disciple in order
Yep.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would say a great way, if we were talking about a practical thing of like in a self assessment,
Yeah.
well, I always tell, hey, look at your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
What is your
Yep.
schedule telling you in regards to what you're being formed into? Because
Mhm.
you're investing your time into
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
or you're spending your time um, uh, consuming something,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then money.
Mhm.
So your
Yep.
money will help. It's an indicator of what we're being formed
Yep.
into,
Yeah.
and then your relationships, like what
Yeah.
what relationships.
Yeah.
And I think once you take assessment of that, I think God's spirit can begin to highlight, like, man, am I truly, if I look back, am I truly becoming more like Jesus? Like, am I
Mhm.
having his heart and his mindset and his way of like, or do I look more and more like, the
Mhm.
the figures and
Yeah.
the talking heads, or the ways of thinking in our
Mm.
culture?
Yeah.
And it's a good thought. So yeah, so discipleship, we've defined it, and also helped to maybe break down some of the misconceptions,
Yeah.
and ultimately what we want to help people know. And even if, like, because I know church leaders listen to this as well, it like I think, most church leaders, their mindset is like they're probably doing things because they think it's actually helping people be like Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a really great practice for leaders is to say, how effective is this?
Yeah.
Like, actually look at the people
Mm.
that you've been entrusted to
Yeah.
to lead, to shepherd, to pastor, whether you're a small group leader, like for kids or for youth or for
Mhm.
adults. Uh, if you're like a worship leader or a pastor or a deacon or an elder, like actually to say, like, how, like, the people that I've been
Yeah.
entrusted to lead and shape and to inform, and like, are they actually looking more like Jesus? And that's a
Mhm.
Mhm.
really, it's like, man, and then what can I do to help make that more effective? And I
Yeah.
Mhm.
think that's a really
Yeah.
wise thing. So
Yeah.